Welcome back. I realized recently that my puzzle rating has dropped a little bit from the last time I did any puzzle videos on here, so I'm going to work on some puzzles for a little while. It's not really for content, although, hey, content, but it's more about me needing to do these. This one, the first thing I noticed here is that I am up a piece, but down 2 pawns. The opponent has a passed E pawn and an extra C pawn ahead of me, but again, I'm up a bishop for those 2 pawns. Currently, my bishop is under threat, and I only have a few choices, a few places to move it. Another thing I notice is that my rook is pinned. So I cannot move the rook as long as this queen is here. So that way, even if there were a really good spot to move this bishop, I cannot do a back rank checkmate, is my point, because the rook is pinned. Another thing I notice is that I'm not in danger of a back rank myself, because, like, for example, if the queen were to move here, I can block that or capture it. If the queen were to go here, I can block it. But I would be in danger then from here, so I would have to do something. So I am in a little danger. I do not have any checks other than this one, which just loses a queen, and I don't think there's a good way out of that. I don't think that sacrifice would benefit me. Because if the queen captures, yes, and see, I don't have this follow-up check because the rook is pinned. So yeah, that sacrifice would be pointless. So there are no checks in this situation for me. There is this move to get the bishop out of danger, and that spot is protected by my queen. But that would leave me open to this rook coming down, which would not be check, but if I recaptured, then if the opponent recaptured, I would recapture and I would just be up a bishop. If I did that, if the opponent captured here and I recaptured and they took that, then we would both have queens, and I would be, that would be bad, right? Yeah, I would lose a rook and a bishop for a rook. And then I would still be down the C pawn. So this is looking difficult for me. If I do this, not only is the bishop still in danger of being captured, but the opponent would still have this and recapture. Yeah, then they would take the bishop. And I would be down a pawn in the endgame with my king on my 2nd rank, or the 7th rank, as the case may be. So I wonder, this is a new candidate move I just now came up with. I wonder about that. That's bad, right? Because the queen could just take my queen, and if I captured back, there would be this and this, but I would still have a bishop in the end game, I think. Let's see here. But if I did that, the opponent could just do this. Oh no, but then their queen would be hanging. That's the issue here. If I take this way, their queen is directly threatened and unprotected. So they would need to either capture my queen or try something else. One thing that they could try would be check, which I could only block with the rook. Then they could take my bishop. Oh no, if they took my bishop, then I would have a back rank mate. at that point. I'm going to try that. Nothing else has looked any good at all. Let's try that. That was not it. Okay. Let's see. I clearly missed something, so I'm going to click the hint button. It was to take that pawn, which was one of my original candidate moves, but that's the reason I rejected it, is because now that doesn't make any sense. No, that doesn't make sense to me, because right back here, when I took that rook, I thought the queen would take the bishop. Oh, but the queen wouldn't take the bishop because of back rank mate. So now I'm just up a bishop in the endgame. And I've taken away one of their extra pawns. Now my rating is even lower than it was. Okay, how hard is this position going to be? That knight is in a bad place. It's pinned to the king by my queen. I am in a bad place here, but it's my turn. That wouldn't be mate because of this, but it would be getting close. Let's see, what checks do I have? I have this check, which seems kind of silly because the king can take it or the rook can take it. So that sacrifice I don't think would help me a whole lot. Let's see. If the rook took, then I could capture this knight. The only legal move would be to block with the rook, and then I would have checkmate on the back rank. But what if the king captured? If I said check here, the knight cannot capture. But what if the king captured? Then what check threat do I have? Here? But then, if the rook blocked and I went to the back rank, then the king could just come forward, I think. So I don't think that's it, because there's options. Here it would be a back rank mate if the rook captured, because of this, the rook having to block and me going back. But the rook doesn't have to capture, the king can capture. And then I don't have a good follow-up check. This is a follow-up check, but it's not a good one because, I mean, the king can just move or the rook can block, and I don't have anything. So I don't think that's it. I'm wondering now, what about a queen sacrifice? Because the king cannot move. My rook guards this whole rank here, this whole file. So the only legal move would be for the rook to capture. Then if I went d1 with my rook, the rook would be forced to move back and I would capture it, and that would be checkmate. So I believe that's it. That's a forcing sequence with only one possible move each time. Okay, just to reconsider, I do believe rook to a d1 is the option, and then that's checkmate. Okay. Moving on. All right, we have chased the king, and I actually have no idea why it would have made that move in that situation. Did it think that spot was safer than where it just was? Maybe trying to get the rook out of the pen? I don't know. I do have a couple of checks. Well, multiple checks, but let's see if that's the answer. I mean, I don't think this is the answer because I lose a queen to a pawn. My advantage right now is that I have pieces developed while they are all stuck on the back rank. Their king is out in the middle. But again, that check fails to this pawn capture. This check, oh, actually that looks pretty good. Is that mate? At first I wasn't thinking it was, but that spot is guarded by this pawn. And then the king can't run, right? Pawn guards that, pawn guards that. This pawn is guarded by the queen that would be here, which is guarded by this pawn. That spot would be covered by my queen, as with that one. That might just be a one-move mate. Okay. All right, let's keep going. That's 2 in a row that took a lot less time to figure out than the first one. 1945. Okay. Neither one of those knights is currently pinned to the king because of the other one in the way. But this one is hanging. So it's just a free knight right there. And then the second one then would be pinned. But if I took that, it doesn't come with a check, so it's not a forcing move. The opponent could check me here or here after that, and then I would be on the run. So that's one candidate move, is to take a free knight. Another one that I like very much is check here, because I look for checks first, right? The queen checks at this moment are not good, because here I lose my queen to the king. Here I lose my queen 3 different ways. Here I lose my queen to a pawn or a knight. So the queen checks are not good. But the knight check here, no enemy piece is guarding this square, so the knight would be safe. The king cannot come forward because of my queen or here, so it would be forced there. Okay, so check. King is forced. I will not bring my queen here because of this knight. But I could bring my queen there. Okay, follow this. Check. The king has only one legal move there. So the king moves there, and then I go down. And that guards this square. The knight would guard this square, and that would be mate. Okay, I believe. There's nothing they can do to block this. Okay. All right. We are even on material. So a trade would not change that. However, let's look at what else is around. They have the long-range piece, which is currently pinned. They have one extra pawn, but it is doubled, so less effective. If I do take this rook, they would not capture with the queen because that would leave the bishop hanging. I mean the king. But they could capture back here. I'm not in danger of a back rank because I can get out. But that doesn't look great. What about... I wonder about this. What about this? A check. What does the king... What do they do if I check here? Because I'm going to look for checks first. Right? So check with the knight. The bishop, again, is pinned. Could not recapture. The rook could capture, but it's not guarded by the bishop because the bishop is pinned. So I would get a rook for a knight. Okay, but they don't have to capture with the rook, right? They can just get out of check. So I'm guessing that's not the best move because they would just get out of check. So let's go back to this. Takes. Then it's my turn. But what would I do then? Should I double the rooks? That's a question. What if I double the rooks here to come in? I think in that case I think white would just move up a rook to guard the bishop in that case. Let's see. This rook is currently guarded by the knight. So I could leave it there for a moment if I wanted to. I could pick off this pawn, since it doesn't look like I have any good checks. So I'm looking at captures. I could pick off, actually I could pick off this pawn with the knight, but then this rook is not guarded. But if I pick off the pawn with my rook, well then then the bishop's not pinned anymore, and they can pick off. No, that pawn's guarded. Not really, because the knight's doing too much work here. Yeah, if I just pick off this pawn, I think they can just take this one, and then I don't have a follow-up really. I have a feeling I'm going to get this wrong because none of the candidate moves really look good for me. What about a sacrifice? Rook sacrificed here, capturing the bishop with check. It's not forced, but I think any reasonable player would recapture, and the king would be here. And then I would have a follow-up check here, and the king would just get out of check. I'm missing something strong, and I don't know what it is. I don't think the doubling of the rooks is the answer, because that doesn't actually threaten anything. They can really easily protect this spot. I'm going to go with the rook trade. I've tried all the candidate moves, and that one works out the least bad for me. But yeah, okay, that was wrong. Let's hit the let's hit the hint button. It was that rook, and it was doubling the rooks. Okay, what? Really? Okay. I had to count on them blundering and giving up the bishop? But they didn't have to move away from the bishop, right? They could have just protected. I'm going to analyze this, as the old movie title says. It definitely says rook d to e8 is the best move. But here, what's the okay, here it says b5 is the best move, but the king did this. Why is this the bad move though? I thought that would have been the obvious response to protect this. Oh, it says now that if I see this, then what? It says to bring the other rook over because this one's being threatened. Couldn't they just back up? Oh no, because I would go here and threaten the rook. And it says now to put this rook here. That doesn't make any sense because then I capture the rook. Wouldn't they just put it back to continue guarding that? Oh, because now I can say check here. But then the king just comes here, right? I know it says -8 right now, so black's way far ahead. But oh, because okay, I forked the rook. Okay, I get it now. Because now I get the rook. Look at that, going backwards. All right. Well, this rook's doing no good over here. This is one reason to castle, to get those rooks out. My rook is under threat, but if I move it very far, my knight is under threat. I can move the knight to protect the rook, but then it just gets taken, and I have to move the rook anyway. This pawn is guarded by the rook. This pawn is guarded by their knight. I mean, I suppose I could go there. I don't know. But then, oh, and it couldn't chase me because of the knight, right? If I go there. But then what? Then they check me, and I lose my rook. And this is probably why my ratings are not going up. Let's try and start with checks. I have a protected check here, but they just take my knight, right? Yeah. So that doesn't get me anywhere. This check, I just lose my rook. This check, I just lose my rook. Can I castle? Well, I can, but that was the wrong move. That's the only way to find out if castling was legal, was to try it. It was... Really? I guess my fault for not checking out captures, but I can take that pawn, and if the rook captures back, then I can fork the king and the rook. However, the rook does not have to capture back. But it did, because it's a puzzle. Yeah, I'm going to analyze that one too. Got to sit up straight. My posture needs help, right? It definitely says that's the best move for me because it's a free pawn. And it's the computer says that white's best move is to give up the rook. Okay. I mean, I guess so. And then obviously this is the only good move for black at this position. And no matter where the king goes, I get the rook. And threaten this pawn. Okay. Next puzzle. Now, what, 22 points lower than where I started this video. So, hopefully some of you can sympathize with me. This is not looking good. Do I have any checks? No. Yes, I do have a check. That's interesting. This check forces the king to h8. And then I'm going to lose this rook anyway, right? Probably. Probably. I can do this, which forces the king to capture on h7. And then that's mate. Pretty sure. Yeah, that's checkmate. Because the knight guards these two squares. Okay. Well, they threw in an easy one just for fun. I do have a check. Protected check, which gets my rook out of danger. Also, that's just mate, isn't it? I think that's mate. Yeah, that was way too easy for this. Okay. All right, an opening puzzle. We could do the queen trade idea, but they just capture back and I've gained nothing, I think. Or I could move this knight for a discovered check. What if I moved the knight here? Just for example, they can't capture it because it's check from the rook and the knight. So even though that piece could be captured and this check could be blocked, it's double check. The king has to move. The king cannot move this way because of my queen. Cannot move this way because of my rook. The king would be forced here. Okay. So check. King has to go to f8. Then I would capture the queen with check, which would force the knight to capture, and then I will put my rook on e8, which would be checkmate. Nine points. Excellent. But now I'm 30 minutes in and about where I started. All right. Maybe it felt bad for me because I lost so many, and it was like, we should give this poor guy some easy puzzles. That's probably what happened. I do have some checks, but that's bad. I just lose a queen. The knight goes there. I have this check, which is safe temporarily, and the king cannot go here or here because of my two power pieces. It could go here, but then I would take the knight, or it could go there. So what if I took with check here and the king went this way? What would I do? Because if I just take the knight, then the king is not in check over here on d8. And these little guys over here can start checking me. You know, well, bam, I'm in check. And I guess if I tried to go there, then no, that wouldn't be good. Well, maybe that's not so bad. Or they could check me here. And then, yeah, then I would be on the run. But that first move's got to be it, right? There's nothing else. There is nothing else. Oh, mouse slip. Oh, my God. I mouse slipped that. You saw that, right? I had just said I was going to take that pawn with jack. That's really frustrating. Okay, I don't have to take the knight. I can continue checking. If I check here, probably doesn't want to do that because I'll slide right in his DMs. And so he would probably move over further. And then I would, have that fork. Yeah. I could take with my king, but I would prefer to do this. I lost 10 points on that because of a mouse. I guess my finger came off the button for it. Ooh-wee. That is frustrating. Okay, that looks like a free queen, but it's not. I mean, not free. It looks like a queen trade, but here we have a passed pawn right here. So I don't think that's the best idea. Because then no matter what I do, they have a queen on the next turn. I think we have to check. And then the king goes here. Then what do I have? But I don't see any other option. That's the only check I have. I mean, that's a check too, but come on. Nobody's taking that seriously, right? Moves, but this has to be the first move. Okay. At least I'm not completely insane, but that was the first move. But the second move is no more checks except this pawn, and he just takes it. I mean, he has to take it. That's his only legal move. And then I wish pawns could jump twice here, but they can't, so I don't have that. I would have to, that's my only follow-up. No, that's not my only follow-up check. Once he takes that, this is a follow-up check too. And it would force him here. Let me think about this. This is my only check. He captures. What happens if I go here? He only has one legal move up here. I can check with the pawn. And then he goes here, and I come in here, and it's over. Wow. Oh, wow. Man, surely I should end this higher than I started. I would be higher than I had started if I hadn't done that misclick and lost 10 points. Okay. I could capture the queen. Queen trade, but that just leaves us with having traded queens, and then I'm down 2 minor pieces. Because I'm currently down 2 minor pieces. But you know what? I can be down 1 minor piece by capturing here with check. And then the queen blocks again. And then I have a safe check here, which the queen could block again, and I could take this pawn. Maybe. Okay. But see, I still don't want to take here because I'm still down a full minor piece. Checking here loses the queen. 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 All of those for free except this one, which would be a trade. Checking here threatens this pawn and therefore the rook behind it. Okay. I mean, there's a safe check, but then that doesn't threaten anything. This actually threatens something. And then they have to move the knight out someplace and lose the knight too. Okay. Honestly, I don't remember where I started. I don't remember if it was 1945. I think it was 1945. So I need to do one more. Okay. This will probably be the end of me. The king cannot move. So this is checkmate. All right, I'm going to stop. I've seen this one before. This pawn is pinned once the knight moves. Yeah, and the king is trapped by its own pieces. All right. Well, thank you for watching. I'm going to try to edit out a few of my blankest, dullest moments, and I'll see you next time.